Hey there, and welcome back to Talking with Tanya. I'm really glad you're here. Today's episode is a bit more personal. I'm talking about something a lot of us go through but don't always say out loud, trying to figure out who the heck we are in our 20s. Honestly, if you're older and still figuring things out, this episode is definitely still for you, because I think the journey to self-discovery doesn't follow a set timeline. I've been through a lot of different jobs, ideas, and phases, some that felt aligned at first, others not so much. I've worked at a movie theater, a diner, a grocery store. I went to college for graphic design, dropped out. I've done demolition work, tried sales, attempted to start a virtual assistant business, worked as a receptionist at a tax office, went back to school for psychology, graduated, moved states, and now here I am, hosting this podcast. And I still don't have it all figured out. But every one of those paths taught me something. So in this episode, I want to walk you through each chapter, what I tried, why it didn't work out, and most importantly, what it revealed to me about myself. Because even the messy or random experiences are part of the bigger picture. If you're feeling lost, stuck, or unsure about your path, I hope this episode reminds you you're not behind, you're just exploring, and you're allowed to take your time finding your way. Let's get into it. I was 18 years old when I moved out of my parents' house, all the way from California to Virginia, to live with my sister. I didn't really have a plan, I just kind of knew I had to get out of the environment I was in. I craved change, peace, and a fresh start. Once I got there, I realized I had some family support, but in terms of direction, I was kind of on my own. That's when the real lessons started. I had to learn how to depend on myself, face challenges head on, and begin the process of taking care of me. That move changed me. It was scary, it was isolating at times, but it was also the beginning of stepping into my own strength, realizing that even when things fall apart, I can rebuild something better. And like most fresh starts, I needed a job, so I applied to the closest place I could find, the local movie theater. Now, technically, I wasn't 20 yet, still 18, but this was my first real job. I say real because while I had worked briefly as a receptionist for an AC and heating company, it was out of someone's home and barely lasted a few weeks. It feels more like a fever dream than a job. Anyway, I wanted to start this story from the beginning of my work life to paint a picture of my growth in the workforce, and growth in myself, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do, right? Figure out where we fit, how to use our strengths, and hopefully make a life out of it. Working at the movie theater was the beginning of that search. I remember wondering if I'd be good at it, if I could keep up, or if I'd feel as invisible as I did back in high school. And that's when it hit me. A lot of the beliefs I had about myself from those early years were still following me into adulthood. Beliefs like I'm too quiet, too loud, too poor, too much, or just not enough. But that job started to chip away at those old stories. It taught me to speak up, set boundaries, and realize that not everyone deserves access to my energy, and that's okay. There were moments when I felt proud and capable. Other times I felt overlooked and underappreciated. Even when I became a reliable and hardworking team member, I never got Employee of the Month. I started to question my worth, not just in the job, but in life. That's when I saw a flyer in the break room about symptoms of depression, and I realized I was talking about myself. I knew something had to change. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I had to find my spark again. I had to figure out who I was beyond that job and beyond those old beliefs. But everyone's journey looks different, and it's not like I was going to find my dream job overnight. Looking back, there's still a lot of soul searching that I needed to get done. Around that time, a few coworkers and I habitually grabbed food after our shifts. We'd always end up at this local diner, pretty well-known spot, but I won't name drop just in case. After going there a few times and getting to know the staff, one thing led to another, and suddenly I had a new job opportunity on my plate. I only took it because I was already unhappy at the theater and the diner paid more. My logic was, if I'm going to be miserable, I might as well get paid better for it. Working there didn't last super long, but it was definitely one of those jobs that sticks with you. I worked the graveyard shift, clocking in late at night and leaving early in the morning. Let me tell you, just because it's the middle of the night doesn't mean it's quiet. People love to eat after parties, concerts, or late night hangouts, and this place was always full. I had to juggle multiple large tables at once, and it hit me fast that most people don't care what's happening behind the scene. Whether I was backed up, struggling to take orders, or running around trying to make things happen, that was my problem, not theirs. I've never dealt with more rudeness in my life than I did working there. But it taught me patience. It taught me how to read a room, how to stay calm when someone is talking down to me, and how to hold my ground without losing myself. At first, I actually enjoyed the pace. It kept me sharp, but like most things not meant for you, it didn't take long for the burnout to settle in. The fast-paced rush into emotional exhaustion. I started to feel like This can't be it. I still had responsibilities at home, and trying to balance late night shifts, household duties, and my personal life left me drained. The life I was living just didn't feel like it fit anymore. I didn't know what was next, but I knew I wanted more. And honestly, that job taught me just how strong I am. It showed me that I can handle way more than I thought, and it helped me make me a little less afraid of whatever life throws at me next. While I was working at the diner, I started to realize just how much I missed home. Being strong all the time gets exhausting. You start to crave comfort, familiarity, and the people who know you best. I was overwhelmed with everything going on, so I decided to step away from the diner and head back to my hometown just to reset. That stay didn't last long. Things between my mom and me were tense, and just after 2 weeks, I found myself heading back again. I didn't return to the diner, and honestly, at that point, it didn't feel like there were many options out there for someone like me, so I ended up back at the movie theater for about another year. But it didn't feel the same this time. The people I used to know had moved on, and every week someone new was coming in while others left. I started to feel stuck, like everyone around me was growing, moving forward, and I was just still there. Eventually, I made the choice to fly back home again, hoping this time it would be different. I had a return ticket back to Virginia, but my mom convinced me to stay, and honestly, it didn't take much convincing. Being home just felt right. I was back to my roots, back in a place that felt familiar and safe. What really sealed the deal, though, was the decision to go back to school. Back in Virginia, I didn't feel like I had much direction. I definitely didn't want to go back to work into the movie theater. I kept thinking, there's more than that. I feel like I had potential I hadn't even touched yet. So I stayed. And when it came time to choose a major, I started asking myself real questions like, what actually makes me happy? What am I even good at? People around me always called me creative, told me I was an artist, so I narrowed it down to graphic design. For a lot of people, going to college is like a straightforward step, but no one in my immediate family had taken this route before, so for me, it felt like uncharted territory. I had to figure everything out on my own. It wasn't just about school, it was about learning how to move through the process while managing my anxiety. I was terrified of looking dumb, making the wrong move, and trying to explain it all to my immigrant mom while still convincing her and myself that I knew what I was doing. But for the first time, I was making a decision that felt like mine, not based on whatever anyone else wanted or expected, just felt what felt right to me. The college experience itself wasn't exactly what I imagined. Everyone kind of kept to themselves, and while it was hard for me to make new friends, I realized it wasn't because I didn't fit in, it was because I had become more selective of where I placed my energy. I no longer felt the need to maintain friendships that didn't feel aligned or left me drained. Still, those old thoughts crept back in. Am I good enough? Will this even be worth it? I started imagining my future self in this career and asking, would I be happy, fulfilled? Will all the work I put in actually lead somewhere? And if I didn't feel 110% sure, I panicked. It felt like if I wasn't all in, then everything would have been for nothing. The inner pressure mixed with how competitive the design field made me start doubting myself more and more, and eventually I ended up dropping out. The decision had been sitting in my mind for a while, but it finally clicked during the social distancing period. The technical issues I was having at home only made the choice easier. I didn't have it in me to keep investing energy into something my heart wasn't fully in anymore. Dropping out of college meant one thing: I had to figure something out, and that meant getting a job. Bills don't pay themselves, and my parents made it clear that once I turned 18, I was responsible for my own needs, wants, and essentials. So I applied to just about everything I could think of. Before moving, it felt impossible to get a call back. I figured now that I have some work experience, I might finally hear back. Still, rejection after rejection left me feeling hopeless, until I finally got a call from a well-known Mexican grocery store. If you know, you know. It was my only opportunity at the time, so I took it. But looking back, I think some experiences are meant to happen because your soul needs those lessons to evolve. And this one, although short lived, taught me some of the hardest ones yet. This was one of the most toxic work environments I've ever worked in. I was constantly talked over, ignored when I raised concerns, and I honestly believe I was gaslit every time I brought an issue to the manager. At one point, a manager even laid a hand on me. It triggered old wounds, the childhood fears of messing up, of being punished for just existing. But this time felt different. I knew I had to stand up for myself, even if it was hard. It meant walking away and choosing my peace. Even though part of me hated the thought of feeling like a burden to my family, still, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I didn't have a backup plan, and I know how tough the job market was, but I chose myself anyway. I chose peace over survival. And it wasn't for me And it wasn't just for me. I spoke up for the other employees who were being mistreated too. When the assistant general manager asked me why I was leaving, I told him everything. Tears streamed down my face as I spoke, but deep down I knew I was doing the right thing. Looking back now, I'm proud of myself. That experience reminded me you don't grow in comfort. Sometimes choosing yourself is the hardest part, but it's also where the real strength is born. After that, opportunities were slim, but not impossible. Thankfully, a family member opened the door for me, and that led me to an unexpected chapter. Drumroll, please. Demolition work. I was actually excited to start. I wanted to prove to myself and to others that I could handle it. This job was no joke, breaking down cabinets and countertops, jackhammering floors, hauling heavy bags of trash to the dump. It was physically demanding and labor intensive work, but it taught me a lot. I gained a whole new level of respect for people who do that kind of work every day. And yes, I definitely appreciate the Tone's arms it gave me too. Every day I came home exhausted, but over time I started to feel stronger. I learned what resilience really looks like, not just pushing through soreness, but pushing past the mental walls I didn't even know I had. I felt capable, empowered, like I could take on more than I could ever thought possible. Toward the end, though, things got complicated. There were power struggles, and I stayed quiet through a lot, mainly because I needed the income. But it made me take my finances more seriously. I started thinking long term. I want to get ahead. But it became clear that this job wasn't going to support that kind of future I was trying to build. With the way the economy is right now, I know a lot of people in my generation are struggling to create the kind of future our parents had. Buying a house, starting a family, it feels harder than ever. Like many others, I started looking into side hustles that could help me bring in extra income. That's when I reconnected with an old friend who introduced me to a health and wellness product I couldn't ignore: water filtration machines. And if you've been listening to my podcast, you already know how passionate I am about health and wellness. So it felt like a perfect match. I won't get into the details of the product just yet. That might be a whole other episode. But what came with it was more than just a business opportunity. I joined a community of mentors and peers who had growth mindsets and big dreams. For the first time in a while, or at all, I felt surrounded by people who actually believed in progress and purpose. At first, I was all in. I felt driven, motivated, even a little pressured. I could tell my family didn't see it as a real step forward. It felt more like a disappointment than support, which lit a fire under me. I wanted to prove them wrong. And I grew. I started posting myself online, facing fears of being seen and judged. I found more confidence, discovered leadership qualities I didn't know I had, and I learned what it meant to be disciplined and consistent. I started to understand that success isn't just a destination, it's something you build step by step. But over time, something shifted. Even though I was learning from people who had built real success, I started to realize their methods didn't align with my values. Like most sales environments, the focus was on highlighting the positives while kind of brushing aside the negatives. And eventually, it started to feel a little fake. I felt I had to water myself down to maintain a professional image, say the right things, act a certain way, and it didn't feel true to who I am. The connections I was building weren't emotionally fulfilling either. They felt a little superficial or lighthearted. And I'm in search of something real. I realized I'm not here to just chase money or success. I want to build something that actually means something to me, that serves others and stays true to who I am. And even though it was hard to admit it to myself, I knew it wasn't for me. So I chose to walk away. And in doing so, I grew stronger. I learned to trust my intuition, even when it meant letting go of something that looked promising on the outside. So the search for a side hustle continued. By this point, I felt more capable. I knew I had the qualities to succeed. I'm detail oriented, reliable, a problem solver, and determined. I wanted to take control of my image, my voice, and build something from scratch that truly felt like mine. There comes a point where you can only read so much, watch so many videos, and research endlessly. Eventually, you're gonna have to take action. So I decided to start a virtual assistant business. At the time, it felt like the right move. It made sense on paper. But underneath that drive was also a lot of pressure. Pressure to have my life together, pressure to prove myself, pressure to move fast because it felt like time was running out. The truth is, I didn't give it my all. I didn't fully commit. But that alone became a lesson. It reminded me that rest and stillness are still part of the process too. Sometimes you need to pause, to recenter and reconnect with yourself. This chapter made me rethink what success even means. I realized I didn't want to build something just to keep up with others' timelines or chase superficial goals. I wanted to build something that reflected my values. So I walked away, not because I failed, but because I needed something more honest, something aligned, something real. While those side hustle attempts didn't quite take off, I was growing restless in demolition and found myself back on the job hunt. That's when I landed a temporary position at a tax office. It was a little scary taking a role that had an expiration date, but I was ready for a change, and so I took a leap of faith, and I am so glad I did. Working there was one of the most family-oriented, positive environments I've ever experienced. I didn't even know workplaces like that existed. There were older women there who became role models to me, women who listened to me, cared about my opinions, recognized my difficult past, and nurtured me in ways I didn't even know I needed. They believed in me, and honestly, it felt like a fated experience. Even though I already considered myself pretty mature, this job helped test and stretch that maturity. It challenged my professionalism, my people skills, and my ability to adapt. While it didn't fully align with who I am at my core, I still felt like I was able to shine, like I had space to show up in a way that felt strong and steady. Of course, it came with its own set of stresses, like any job, but it pushed me to rely on myself more and figure things out as I went. I learned to trust my decisions, even under pressure. There were all kinds of personalities there too, and I learned how to connect with others while still protecting my peace. That experience made me realize how much I value relationships that go deeper, ones that nurture my creativity and align with my empathy and compassion. Most of all, it gave me space to think about my goals, my strengths, my weaknesses, and enough breathing room to keep trying to figure out who I really wanted to become. I knew that job wasn't going to be forever, so I started thinking about other ways to create income, especially ones that gave me more freedom. Honestly, by that point, I was just tired of working for other people. The routines, the office jobs, it all felt dull and uninspiring. I realized I needed something that let me express myself creatively, and that's when the idea of starting an Etsy shop came to me. I built it around a subject I had completely fallen in love with: astrology. I started making crystal bracelets, I actually have one on right now, inspired by each zodiac sign, which I still sell to this day, by the way. Astrology really found a special place in my heart because it gave me a whole new way to make sense of my experiences. It helped me validate what I had been through, offered me a new lens to view it, and even helped me begin turning some of that pain into healing. Astrology made me feel like my life had meaning, like everything was unfolding with purpose. It helped me recognize that some of the beliefs and values I was carrying weren't actually mine, they were inherited. And from there, it gave me the tools to come back to my truth. To me, astrology is like a language, a way the universe speaks to us. It doesn't tell us what to do, but it helps guide us toward where we'll feel most fulfilled. And if you're curious, I do offer astrology chart readings in my Etsy shop too. Just putting it out there. With the passionate energy building inside of me and supportive roles around me in the tax office job, it led me to want to go back to school. At this point, I wanted something solid, almost like a backup plan. All these different paths made me feel like I couldn't depend on myself to pull through any of them. I kind of felt defeated, so I wanted something to fall back on if I decided a new path and quit again. However, I did want to major in something that could give me fulfillment and help me understand myself better, so I chose psychology. Even though this was my focus, being in school exposed me to a variety of environments that helped me grow. I learned to speak with more passion and confidence in my public speaking class. I discovered that I needed to create safe spaces for myself in my pottery class. And in my psychology classes, I learned where my limiting beliefs came from and how to challenge them. Despite initially being drawn to psychology, I also found that I didn't like sticking to just one subject. I loved learning about the stars in astronomy, the history of music and rock and roll, and the inner workings of the human body in biology. I realized I'm someone who loves learning about everything. In the end, I proved to myself I could finish something, that I could push through even with fear and doubt, and earn not just one, but two associate degrees. And that showed me maybe I'm not a quitter after all. Now we're at the end of an era and the start of a new one. I've been hurt, I've healed, I've celebrated, I've spent years choosing others before myself. But now I finally learned how to choose me. That choice led me to move back to Virginia. After 6 years of living with my family and being deeply rooted in the place that raised me, I gained clarity about who I am and what I need to keep going, to keep growing. At some point, I realized the lessons I needed weren't there anymore. The final lesson was choosing myself. I had been giving so much of my energy to others, to my family, to their healing, to holding space, and now it's time to start pouring that same energy into me. Because the truth is, the best way I can show up for them is by showing up for myself first. Leaving wasn't easy. I'm deeply family oriented. I feel their pain, I see their struggles, and for a long time I felt like I was a light in the room, a breath of fresh air. I created space for them to be, to feel, to exist. But somewhere along the way, I realized there was no space left for me to turn that light inward, no space to transform myself. That's when I started this podcast. And even though it's only been about 2 months, I already feel like a completely different person from when I recorded my very first episode. Putting this one together brought up a whirlwind of emotions, so many memories, so much growth, but it also reminded me of how far I've come, of who I really am, and how excited I am to keep creating with intention, on purpose, with purpose. If you made it this far, thank you for listening and for holding space for my story. I know this episode was a little more personal, but I hope that by sharing the twists and turns of my journey, it reminded you that your path doesn't have to look perfect. It doesn't have to be linear, and it definitely doesn't have to make sense to anyone but you. We all grow at different paces. We all have moments where we feel lost, stuck, behind, or unsure, but that doesn't mean we're failing. It just means we're becoming. These paths help me truly realize just how multifaceted I am. I'm not meant to be contained or boxed in. I'm meant to shine, to show strength through vulnerability, and to find true emotional fulfillment by doing so. So if you're in a phase where things feel uncertain, where you're questioning what's next or doubting where you've been, I hope this reminds you to give yourself grace. You're not behind, you're just in the middle of your becoming. Keep going, keep choosing yourself, keep trusting your path, even when you can't fully see it yet. And if this episode spoke to you, feel free to reach out and let me know. Whether it's on Instagram or in a comment, I always love hearing from you. Until next time, thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. Peace out.